So welcome to a video that the Daiwa fans and fanboys are gonna love. And that's because in this video we're gonna be doing a cast battle, and there is a 100% chance that a Daiwa is gonna win. And with that being said, let me show you the reels that are gonna be participating. Now the first reel is gonna be the STEEZ SV TW. And obviously this reel would be participating in an all Daiwa cast battle because other than the STEEZ CT, which has a much smaller spool, this is the most expensive Daiwa reel you can get baitcaster wise here in America. Now the second reel is going to be the long discontinued T3 ballistic, and the reason I'm including this reel, even though it has a really heavy stock spool, is because it has the 3D brake system that has the long cast mode. And the third reel that's going to be participating is going to be the TATULA that's designed for long casts, the TATULA Elite Long Cast. Daiwa has tuned the brakes for this reel to do those long casts, and that's what separates it from the other Tatulas. And then last but not least, we have the star of this video. That's going to be Daiwa's Zillion 1000 with the SV Boost brake system. Now this cast battle has two purposes. Now the secondary purpose of this cast battle is to see which one of my Daiwas casts the longest. Now I have way more Daiwas than this, but the rest of them are bait finesse reels or lower end Tatulas. But the main purpose of this cast battle is to see if Daiwa's SV Boost system actually works against other Daiwa brake systems. Now I have put the SV Boost Zillion 1000 up against its rivals from Shimano, being the METANIUM MGL as well as the BANTAM MGL, and unfortunately for the Zillion, even with its boost brake system, it got destroyed by those reels. And I'm talking using monofilament as well as braided line. But just because the SV Boost couldn't beat, Shimano's SBS Infinity, doesn't mean that the boost feature doesn't work. So in order to test if the boost feature actually does give us longer cast, you have to put it up against a Daiwa with a regular SV spool, and that of course is going to be the STEEZ. And then of course, while I'm at it, I might as well throw in the TATULA Elite Long Cast that has a MagForce Z brake system retuned for longer casting, and then of course the T3 ballistic that has, in my opinion, Daiwa's most advanced non-electronic brake system in the MagForce 3D. Now before we get out to the field, we're gonna have a brief history lesson on how SV Boost came about. Why did Daiwa create their boost system? Now, a little over 10 years ago, Daiwa's actually had a reputation of being very finicky, meaning that they would just backlash out of nowhere. Now I never had that problem or issue, and I'm thinking it was probably mostly user error that caused that. But in any event, Daiwas were gaining a reputation for being finicky, hard to use reels. So I think back in either 2012 or 2013, Daiwa created the first SV reel, which was the T3 SV, and I believe it was either the first or second reel that featured the air brake system. Now SV is not a brake system, that's the designation for the spool, but all SV spools have the air brake as well as all of Daiwa's bait finesse reels. Now here's the spool of the TATULA SV with the air brake. Here's the spool of the TATULA CT with MagForce Z. Now with MagForce Z, this little yellow thing here is called a rotor inductor. And during the cast, this rotor or inductor is able to move out because there's a spring here that allows it to do so. Just like that. And it moves in between these two rings here where the magnets are housed, and that slows the spool down. And then as the spool starts to slow down, the centrifugal force allows this rotor to retract during the latter half of the cast, theoretically extending your cast distance a little bit. So that's why I call this a dynamic magnetic brake system, because the magnetic force pretty much changes during the cast. Now with any reel that has the air brake system like the SV reels and Daiwa's BFS air reels, it functions very similar in the fact that the rotor moves, but the spring is much weaker. It's not as stiff, and I don't know if you guys can see, probably not, but there is a piece of plastic attached to the rotor that's cut at an angle. So what happens is that this rotor twists out just like that, and it's very easy to do it. I mean, I'm barely putting any force and this thing's popping out. With MagForce Z, it doesn't twist. It can only come out if the spool is spinning hard enough or fast enough and the centrifugal force pushes this out. So because of the weaker spring in the air brake spools, as well as that plastic ramp that's cut at an angle, this rotor pops out immediately. It doesn't take any force at all for this to pop out, and it stays out all the way during the cast, and even after the lure touches down in the water, this rotor will stay popped out, and then after the spool finally comes to a stop, it'll pop back in. And all you SV guys, some of you may have noticed, most of you probably haven't, but after you make a long cast and after the lure hits the water, you probably notice a little pop noise a split second after the lure hits the water. And that noise is this rotor finally popping back in, and it sounds just like this. So while on paper the air brake is a dynamic system, functionally it's a static magnetic system, and this is why any reel with the air brake system doesn't cast as far as reels with other brake systems. So this is why Daiwa came out with their boost system. The first one being the SV Boost, and then later on they came out with the MagForce Boost. Now of course a lot of people may not have known that these SV reels don't cast very far compared to others, unless some crazy dude on YouTube went out and did a bunch of cast battles and exposed it. So in my opinion, that's why Daiwa came out with the boost system for both the SV reels as well as a couple of the MagForce reels like the latest STEEZ A2. So now that we're done with that little, I guess, history lesson on Daiwa's air brake, before we take off to the casting field, I just want to go over a couple of things. Now all these reels are sporting 34mm diameter spools, so they're equal in that respect, but there's a big discrepancy in weight between their spools. The STEEZ SV has the lightest spool here, coming in at about 9 grams. Next up is going to be the Zillion 1000 with, I believe, to be about either an 11 or 11.5 gram spool. Next up is going to be the TATULA Elite with like a 14 gram spool. And then having the heaviest spool here by far is going to be this T3 Ballistic, and with its bearing it's coming in at like 18 grams. So I'll see you guys out on the casting field. So you saw the casting footage, and now it's time for the reckoning. Now if you're wondering what happened to the T3 ballistic casting footage, I'll go over that towards the end and explain the real reason why I included this reel. Okay, so in case you didn't see, what I was casting was a 3/8 ounce casting plug. All the reels were spooled up with 10-pound monofilament, and I used a 6'6" medium fast action rod. Now all three of these reels used Daiwa zero adjuster, so they were left alone as they were from the factory. All of them have just a slight bit of side-to-side play, and let's get to the results. Now coming in last place is gonna be the STEEZ SV with an average of 157.89 feet. So the most expensive reel here by far was the shortest caster, at least amongst the reels that are still available. So yet another reason why I will probably personally never ever buy another STEEZ unless they come up with some drastic, radical new brake system to put into their top of the line reel. Because in my opinion, Daiwa's philosophy is backwards. Their most expensive reels should have the best performance. And then also, my STEEZ thumb bar is mushy as hell. And that's unacceptable for a reel that costs $550. Okay, so now we are coming down to the Zillion 1000 and the TATULA Elite Longcast, and coming in second place it's going to be the Zillion 1000 with an average of 168.30 feet. So that means my longest casting Daiwa is the cheapest reel here, the TATULA Elite Longcast with an average of 172.66 feet. So it turns out whatever Daiwa did to this Mag 4C braking system makes it my longest casting Daiwa here, even though it has a much heavier spool than the STEEZ and the Zillion. Now in my analysis video of this reel I did a few years ago, I really couldn't tell what Daiwa did to the brake system, but I did see a video where one of Daiwa's reps said they did something to the polarity of the magnets. So whatever they did allowed this TATULA Elite Longcast to win this cast battle. Now when it comes to the SV Boost of Zillion 1000 versus the SV of the STEEZ, since the Zillion beat the STEEZ, does that mean SV Boost actually works? And I'm gonna say inconclusive, because the rotor sizes on these reels are different, as well as the spool weights, and I believe the STEEZ holds a little bit more line. The only real way to see if SV Boost works is to get a Zillion spool that has the same rotor size and weight and line capacity without the extra boost spring, which I don't plan on doing that. Now I wish Daiwa would have shown us, I guess, some measured casting footage showing us that the boost feature actually works and just how much distance you can gain out of it. But for now, it seems to me that whether or not the SV Boost actually gives you longer cast over a standard SV spool is inconclusive, because I heard that the old Zillion SV could outcast the STEEZ as well. So to end this video, let's talk about the T3 ballistic and the real reason why I chose to include it in this cast battle. Now of course, I wanted to see how it compared with the more modern Daiwas, which I consider to have inferior brake systems. And after dialing this reel in using the long cast brake setting and measuring a few casts, it was clear that this reel was not going to compete with the others, as it was averaging casts in the mid 140 foot range. And I attribute that to that really heavy spool that it has, that even though it was in long cast mode, it just doesn't spin up quite as fast as others. But the real reason why I brought this T3 was after I completed all the casts, I was going to take the spool of the Zillion 1000 and the STEEZ and pop it in this reel, because all three of these reels have the same dimension spools and they're interchangeable. And I was going to see if the standard air brake or the SV Boost combined with the adjustability and the long cast mode of the MagForce 3D would give us some kind of a hybrid Frankenstein reel that will just destroy all other reels in casting. But unfortunately, I broke the casting plug off, exploded the spool of the STEEZ when it was in the T3 body, and that was that. I didn't have any spare plugs with me, unfortunately. But I may do that experiment in the future to see if that gives us any kind of impressive results. So there we go, guys. My longest casting Daiwa is the TATULA Elite long cast, and finding out whether SV Boost actually gives us longer casts was inconclusive due to the reasons I mentioned earlier. Alright guys, thanks a lot.